Hi, this is Devin Giddens again. I posted a video on Thursday going over our discussion question for this week. The question being sort of what is the difference between freedom and liberty? After doing the readings and just sort of skimming over a few other sources, I came to the conclusion that that freedom is basically an innate right to be able to exercise liberty. So it's this state of being, sort of a natural human right, you might say, that should guarantee us a certain number of freedoms to be able to commence in X, Y, and Z. You look at the United States Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights, and those amendments to the Constitution basically lay out a set of rights that we have that are just sort of inherent to living into a free country. Liberty, on the other hand, from what I've read and from what I intuitively understand, is that liberty is sort of the action, the ability to execute those freedoms. And the best way to look at it would be free speech. Here in the United States, yet again, going back to the First Amendment of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment guarantees that we have the right to freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, so on and so forth. Liberty would be to have the ability to execute that freedom of speech in whatever form you choose, printing newspapers, protesting. However, I have seen that others sort of came up with different definitions on the subject and how they define it. And for me, I think that makes for excellent discussion questions. Now, so I think that makes for excellent discussion questions. That being said, there does seem to be some confusion, some overlap, some ambiguity as to which means what. There seems to be some class confusion as to what exactly those differences are, and even after doing the class readings for the week, even under my definitions, I'm still not entirely sure what those differences are. And so I think that it is important to understand that these concepts are somewhat interchangeable and fluid, and that's why I believe it makes such a good discussion question, because it's if it was such an easy answer in order to figure out which was which and all that, then there would not be a point in having a long discussion question over the week about it. So that being said, Um, I look forward to reading over some of the other comments and, adding my own questions or suggestions or input into what other people have stated uh, for their questions, for their questions about the difference between liberty and freedom. And I think there are some, points about it that I missed in the and so you can also look at it, the difference between liberty and freedom in other ways. For example, liberation can also mean to be removed from a certain situation, such as the fact that you are extremely liberated from a country that plans to kill you, that has enslaved you, or so on and so forth. Just because you are liberated from a certain situation, probably a non-negative situation, does not mean that you are free. Because free would mean to have a certain set of core rights. So you can be liberated from a dangerous situation, a situation where you're basically enslaved, all sorts of terrible, horrible situations that one can be liberated from, basically removed from. And that is not necessarily true of freedom, because just because you are removed from a terrible situation, you're liberated from it. It does not mean that you are free. And also, you can look at World War II, for example. At least here in the West, we identify liberation as being taken away from what we considered the bad guys here in this country, the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, Japan. But it does not mean that they were free to do whatever they want. Some were still soldiers, others lacked the means financially, and support-wise, so on and so forth, to have freedom, and many were put into POW prison camps at the end of World War II in Europe, in April or May. And although you could say that they were liberated from the Wehrmacht, the German armed forces, that does not mean that they are free. So I think the overall point that I take away from this, and I think other students have as well, is that it's a very complicated question, and it can be interpreted in very many ways. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. But as far as that question goes, that is about the only insight that I have at the moment. But I certainly look forward to engaging other students on the topic before tonight is up, so that we can all get sort of a better, broader understanding of what this topic might mean. So, this is Devin, yet again. Thank you for your attention. Have a good evening. Bye.